I just got back from West Virginia at the School of the Longhunter this weekend, and I haven't even had time to get the fuzz shaved off my face. And well, I'm down there and the daffodils are popping through the ground and the cherry trees are in blossom, and I get back to this. Like, what the heck? Anyway, welcome to Canada. I want to give a shout out to the organizers of that event. Absolutely amazing. Very hospitable people, and they even welcomed this foreigner. And they had a list of phenomenal speakers. So we had Steve Martin gave a talk on Chaga and Tinder. Mike Bellevue, who gave a talk on smoothbore shooting, and I thought I knew everything about smoothbore shooting until I sat through an hour and a half of Mike's presentation. I think that guy's breathed more black smoke than he has air. And then Simeon England gave two talks, one on the role of the blacksmith on the frontier, and a second one on tomahawks and knives and how they carried them. And if nobody's ever looked at some of Simeon's work, the man is an artisan. I'm blown away. I bang things out in my blacksmith shop, but I'm humbled. And then we had Nathan Kobuck, and he gave a presentation on leggings, leg wrappings. And again, you think you know quite a bit until you meet some of these people. And I think Nathan probably doesn't stop long enough researching to eat. I mean, that's the kind of information that came out of these people. I apologize, I didn't make it to a couple of the other presenters, and I'm sure they were equally as good. Now I got to preface this presentation with the fact that my cinematographer and long-suffering editor, my wife Kathy, was unable to attend, so I made a feeble attempt of trying to film the goings-on, but it was pretty hard. Couple of things they did, other things they did, we had a fort feast. Everybody brought potluck food. I don't think I've ever eaten that well. And then they had a round robin trading thing where people sat around a table, no money exchange. They'd plop an item on the counter and then they'd kind of negotiate for who was prepared to give up one of their accoutrements for someone else's, and that was a lot of fun. And the final thing on the final night, they had, well, both a tavern night, where Larry Spisak, he played some fine fiddle tunes there. That was really entertaining. And they had an auction too, so everybody brought a period correct item to put on the table. They were auctioned off with all the funds going to the fort. And I got myself just a fine item there, and sadly I lost the tag somehow en route back here to Canada. But the woman who knit this is made from buffalo wool. So it's spun and knit like you'd knit normal sheep's wool. I'll tell you, that thing's warm. I do a lot of trekking, and I'll tell you, this coming winter, well, I'm still in winter, but this coming winter when I get out trekking, that's going to be a real thing. Anyway, let me take you on a wee bit of an adventure to Prickett's Fort in West Virginia. So here I am at the reconstructed site of Joseph Prickett's fort on the confluence of Prickett's Creek and the Monongahela River. And if we look, the time period I'm looking at, we're going to start with the Treaty of Stanwix, which once it was signed, it gave a lot of land that the natives previously owned to settlers, and it was very quickly filled. And it wasn't uncommon for that time to build these refuges. So it was a turbulent time on the frontier. And if attacked by Indians, they needed a place to to fort up. In fact, the name forting up, that terminology actually comes from people in the surrounding homesteads to make their way into this fortification. And it's interesting where Prickett's fort's located. Within about a 30-mile radius of here, there were approximately 100 such fortified homesteads. And when there was a crisis on the frontier, they would fort up. And sometimes it would be for days, sometimes it would be for weeks. And often in a fort of this size, only 100-foot square, very basically constructed, they might have, as many as 24, 25, 26, who knows, families. And they would all have to crowd into this location. So after the Stanwix Treaty, we have a fellow named Greathouse, and he decides to form a bunch of settlers to ambush a bunch of Mingos along the Ohio River. And as a result of that battle, I could call it a battle, but it became known as the Massacre of Yellow Creek, where Logan's village stood. And that battle leads to, we got some very peeved off Indians, and that battle leads to a period of ultimate turmoil in the frontier, ultimately leading to Lord Dunmore's War. One of the reasons that these fortifications were effective, and I should point out, Prickett's Fort never actually saw a battle, but I'm sure it went a long way to prevent and have a lot of settlers survive where they might not have. So if you look at the indigenous peoples of the time and their method of warfare, if you would, they preferred ambush of working parties. And they tended to avoid such sites as Prickett's Fort. Very hard to breach the walls. They were encased inside with shooting ports, and a handful of men with muskets or rifles could defend this against a massive amount of people. But when they fort up, and if it was a siege situation, it was often common for the attacking indigenous peoples, and in some cases British Rangers. Fort Henry in near Wheeling, West Virginia is an example of that. They would burn all the settlers' homesteads. They would slaughter the cattle, all the livestock. They would burn all their crops, and people that were forced to fort up, at least they came away with their lives, and they were a resilient people, as were all people on the frontier. The frontier I'm talking about was often called the Western Frontier, or more commonly just referred to as the Ohio Country. But they came away with their lives, and they were, like I say, hardy, resilient, and they'd simply start again. They would start to reconstruct their homesteads until they had to fort up again. So the purpose of my trip down here is it's an annual event. It's been run, I should have asked the question how many years. I think it's well over 20, maybe closer to 30 years, and it's called the School of the Longhunter. And I came here to learn, and learn I have. Some phenomenal speakers, some phenomenal artisans. People here are very welcoming. Heck, the hospitality has been such that I feel like I'm back home. And this is going to be an annual event for me. I plan to get down here simply because I can glean so much information about what life was like on the frontier in the 1700s. So here we are inside the blacksmith shop at Prickett's Fort, and essentially what we have is what would have been very typical on the frontier in the 1700s. We've got a couple of forges here, we've got a couple of bellows. An interesting observation here from my blacksmith shop is I don't have historically accurate anvils, but we're looking at a typical anvil, or anvils I should say, from that time period, unlike the anvil to the right, which would have been an English anvil and not very commonly seen on the frontier. But it's completely outfitted. I don't think there's too many things a qualified blacksmith couldn't do in this site. Fantastic recreation.
No matter how
Okay, so one of the highlights for me on this weekend down to West Virginia at the School of Longhunter has been the people I met, and all walks of life. It's been quite fascinating. Very hospitable people, I might add, these American fellows. And I made some new friends, and I got myself Wade Davis here, right, Dave?
Right,
Wade.
right, Peter, nice to meet you.
Yes, sir.
It was wonderful.
And Wade is an executive on the, well, I'm going to let Wade tell you, but of a group down here in the States. And
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the group.
All right, we're a group down here in the United States called the Coalition of Historical Trekkers, or the COHT for short. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer. We're based all over the place, and now with the addition of Peter, we have started a footing into Canada, which is wonderful. We're now truly North American. And we portray a time period from 1650 to 1860, which is roughly a couple hundred years that you can choose, develop a persona, and our primary goal is to get out in the woods and trek and actually practice what many of us term period bushcraft, which is to get out to do the camping skills and to hunt with the period weapons and to do all the stuff that we do out in the wild, out in nature, and enjoy that. We're a family-friendly organization. In fact, a couple of our families are here at the event this weekend. We have kids of all ages. We have activities for the kids. We have a national gathering once a year, generally somewhere throughout, it has been throughout the United States, but we may have to gather at Peter's cabin now that we know about him.
Welcome anytime.
Yes, and but we get together, we appoint a time and place, everybody comes in. We generally have a year lead time so you can plan for it. And we get together and we have a general meeting. We compare kit, compare notes. We have seminars, informational seminars. I'm giving 2 this year. One on the French influence in North America, which is at my persona. I am from Kansas. Those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's the plains right in the middle of the United States, Dorothy and Toto and the Wizard of Oz.
And we're having that today.
We're having that wind here in West Virginia.
Right now.
I brought it with me.
Crazy out there.
But Kansas wasn't settled until the 1850s. But believe it or not, in the 1740s, the French, under the direct of the king, a direct edict from the king, wanted to establish trade with the tribes of the West. So a small French fort was built on the Missouri River on the Kansas side near present-day Fort Leavenworth that was called Fort de Cavigny. And it was occupied from 1744 to 1763, so about 20 years. And I portray one of the employees of the French fur trader that was there. So that's my persona for the COHT. My wife, who is part Native American, or in Canada, First Nations, actually portrays a Native woman. So we like to do a lot of the indigenous skills. My wife finger weaves and does a lot of the clothing and the textiles and the sewing, and I do some of the leather work and a lot of the interpretation, and it's just a wonderful organization. We're proud to have Peter as a member now, and since we've expanded into Canada, I'm going to make a proclamation at our general meeting that we declare him Emperor of the North.
I think the first time I met you was at
Kalamazoo, Michigan, yes.
I think you said we'll either make you a captain or a captured.
Yes,
so
yes.
Now I'm all of a sudden I'm an emperor.
Yes, yes.
You moved up quickly. I moved up in the world.
Yes, you did.
So your group does primarily living archaeology.
Yeah, living archaeology.
What we call it.
Yeah, a number of groups do this. We kind of refer to it as getting on the ground and actually doing it. Discovering how a legging works, discovering what you do when it rains for 3 days, discovering what you do when your tinder is wet. All those things are things that can't be taught in history books, but if you go out into the woods for 3 days, especially here in West Virginia where we've got all 4 seasons in 3 days.
We have that.
Yes, we have. You discover very quickly what parts of your kit and your gear are adequate, what parts are inadequate, and what parts are working well. So it's a real learning curve. We have a lot of people who have been doing it for a long time. I know my first event was the 4th of July weekend in 1981. I went to a Western Mountain Man rendezvous in Green River, Wyoming. And that was the first time I actually took kits, slept out on the ground under the stars.
You're hooked from there on.
Hooked from there on.
Yeah.
Hooked from there on.
Well, so just in terms of members, how many members are?
We've got about 350 members. And
351.
Okay, yes, 350. Yeah. Well, no, actually, we had 349.
I come here, I get talked out of my hard-earned money, and he says he wants $25, but he doesn't want my Canadian. He wants,
no, I wanted American.
I want George
Washington's.
Yeah.
I want the green machine.
There you go. There you go.
So I've traveled to Canada extensively, and I've shared a lot of information with Peter, and we just sort of bonded. I consider him a good man, and I've been a fan of his YouTube station, so his YouTube channel, and now we're going to link that to our COHT website, and we're going to be mass communicating.
Well, Wade, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, Pete.
You know my grandpa, he was a storyteller. I think he taught me to be a storyteller, but I pale by comparison to this fellow. He's kept me laughing all weekend with
Well, I don't know about that, but mostly I make it up as I go.
Well, Wade, thank you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
Glad to be a member of your group, and
glad to have you.
Hope our paths cross again.
We shall.
Very good, sir.
I can't calm my mind down enough to concentrate enough to read. And I'm hoping, I have a big library, but I got some books. And I'm hoping when
I had to redo my bathroom. So we also teach youth track shooting. So William's
Okay.
there's a few rules. Someone will start off. We'll pick Sheldon. He's at the head of the table. Sheldon will start off. The item that is up for question is the item that is started. Anybody goes down along the table can either, if they're interested in his item, they can put something on the table to trade for his item, and so on and so forth. Now, if there's 3 items on the table and it gets down to you and you're interested in another item, that waits. The only item that's up for trade is the one that the person that started put up, which we'll start with Sheldon, so it'll go to him.
Fingers down chalkboard. So anyway, you can put it like that, tuck her up, and like you're gonna kiss, but you suck in.
So, as I mentioned earlier, part of the highlight of my weekend down here in West Virginia has been the people I've met. And I'm going to introduce Alex to you. Pleased to meet you, Alex.
Pleased to meet you.
We've run across each other a couple of times, and I'm going to turn it over to Alex, and he's going to tell you what he does. He's a young fellow into the hobby, which is really good to see, because most of us are my vintage, and he also has a YouTube channel, so with historic content. And I'm going to let you explain what you do and where you're from and where you're going, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Alex. Come from Ohio, and kind of got maybe a little different start in this hobby from what a lot of other folks have. I came up on like Fess Parker, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, and all those shows.
We all did.
Yep. And it didn't really take off for me, though, until I got involved in scouting. And the summer camp I used to go to, you start that program in kindergarten. But I would go out to the summer camp once I turned 10, got into real scouting, and they had a program area at the summer camp. It was called Frontier Trading Company. The staff was in buckskins and stuff. And fell in love with that. When I was 14, I started working out there in the summertime, full-time, about 2 months. You live with 100 other guys, and it was a great experience, but we didn't really have any historical oversight. We were in coonskin caps and couldn't carry rifles, scout camp.
A lot of people started that way.
Yeah. And those are kind of the good days. Now I look back on them because I was kind of ignorant of what it looks like to do it for real. And it was just fun because we weren't concerned about counting stitches or anything. And I've started to take it more seriously, though, got into college, and decided to start the YouTube channel to kind of keep that passion alive. When I was at the summer camp, I used to take my paychecks such that they were, and I'd go to the reenacting store in my hometown. Fortunately, there's some good local history that goes back to the War of 1812. So I'd hit the reenacting store, and I had gotten my first hunting shirt and some leather to make moccasins and things.
Ready
so
to go.
Yeah, I had a little starter kit, I guess, and got myself a cheap camera and a tripod and started making YouTube videos in the woods off campus. And it's kind of spun into a little community. I'm really proud to go to events and, you know, folks recognize you. And at one point somebody stopped me once and said, you know, my son who's a little younger watched your videos and for the first time saw somebody their age and got really interested. I've been trying to get him in for years and couldn't do it.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so it's really the people, like what you said, that it brings you a good sense of satisfaction when you're at events, meeting people and getting to learn new things too.
I should point out, if those of you who have been following our antics or journey, if you would, on the Woodland Escape, are going to love Alex's work. It's really good. It's really well done. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means a lot coming from you. Big admirer. So, yeah, the channel is called Frontier Trading Company. It's named after that program area. And I have big plans. I don't know. We'll see. I got a lifetime to pursue the hobby. Love to, you know, launch a little e-commerce store someday. And the real dream has always been at that scout camp to go back in my retirement with a little bit of money and start an immersive week-long program for scouts to really get into the time period just for that 5 days that they're out there.
That's outstanding.
Get them outfitted and everything. That's the stuff of dreams.
Yeah,
but,
that can happen. So
Yep.
you're still a year in college, or you're in your last year?
I'm in my last year, 1 month left. Yep.
And then out into the world.
Out into real adulthood. Yeah.
Wow.
Hopefully with more time to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping we run into you again.
Yeah.
We're going to put links down below so people can hopefully hit up your channel there. And
Sounds good.
like I said, it's really good content. It was a pleasure, Alex.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.